When I was first born, when I came home from the hospital, we lived, let's see, this is 19th Street, so we lived on 18th Street, a block west of here and 2 blocks north. And my mother and father had a house there. I believe they rented this house. And then after my mother and father left there, moved from there, moved directly up the street here on 19th Street between Michigan and Delaware. And they rented a house there. And while we were living there, then my mother and father decided that they wanted to build some apartments here. Lots became available and were for sale. And so then they bought a lot over on 21st in Virginia. And they built 3 apartment buildings there. And so one of which we lived in, our family lived there. So that was, I think, in maybe 1943 or 44. My mother and father were very fortunate. They were one out of 5 families that were selected by the federal government to build housing facilities here in Santa Monica because of the housing shortage due to the war. And so many people were moving here from other states, other communities, and there was a housing shortage. And so my mother and father were able to receive what was called an FHA loan, along with 4 other families here in this particular community. And they all also built apartments. You know, I remember just having a wonderful childhood. Early on, after my grandfather served his term as minister here at First AME, then the new pastor that came in, his wife was a piano teacher. And so I took piano lessons from her. And you know, we had all of our friends here. We were all located within the same 4 or 5 block radius. We would go out and roller skate up and down the streets together. We ride our bicycles together, especially during the summertime. You know, kids would have their breakfast, go outside, 9, 10 o'clock, play until lunchtime, come back, eat lunch, and go back out and play again. And our parents didn't worry about us. We were all over the neighborhood, which is, you know, sad because we don't have that nowadays. So I just remember that we had a great time as kids. We used to make our own toys. There was a market around the corner from us, and we would go to the market and get those little round bottle caps that came off of the sodas. We would collect these bottle caps and put a hole in them with a nail, string them and make dolls. The boys would make scooters out of wooden crates and put the wheels were from old roller skates that we had. I mean, we had a wonderful time. Our house, we had an incinerator in the backyard. Familiar with the incinerator? Well, maybe for some people that are, you know, that we're talking to, incinerators was like a outdoor fireplace, and you would burn your trash.
Right.
And when my mother wasn't burning trash, then we would use the incinerator to pretend like we were mixing up food and putting things in the oven to bake. You know.
Really?
So I mean, kids just came up with all kinds of ways to entertain themselves. I started out at McKinley Elementary School. I think I went to kindergarten and 1st grade at McKinley. And then the boundaries changed. And so then I went to Grant, which is over on Pearl Street. And then from there, I went to John Adams Junior High School. And then I went to Santa Monica High School. I graduated from Samuel High in 1958. Winter 58. We were one of the last classes to graduate during the winter. Winter was considered like January, February, and our class was so small. I think it was less than 100 students. So then a year or so after that, then they just decided to do away with winter graduation. And so now, ever since then, it's just graduation in June. That's it.
You graduated winter of '58, and then you went, did you go to Santa Monica College right after that?
Right. I went to Santa Monica College for about a year. That was just because it was understood that I was going to college. You know, it was just something that was assumed by adults that you're going, after you're finished with high school, you go to college.
Was that your parents assuming?
My parents,
that?
Okay. And their value system. And I was tired of school. I didn't want to go to school anymore. Mm-hmm. And my mother, you know, this was really ingrained in my father because of the fact that, you know, where he grew up in Fort Worth, Texas, that it was just understood that children go to college. You know, it was mandatory because this is your stepping stone to a greater opportunity in life. My mother thought otherwise and saw that I wasn't interested in school, and so she says, we better try to get her into some kind of business school so she can learn how to do something in life. And so then that's when I went to Willis Business College, learned how to key punch. And like I said, I key punched at UCLA for about 13 or 14 years until I got tired of it. Then I transferred to Cal State Dominguez Hills, and that's where I got my bachelor's in anthropology and American Studies. And then I went an extra year and got a teaching credential. My father was a laborer. When he first came to California, he drove a delivery. He was a delivery person for Criterion Drugstore here in Santa Monica. It was on 3rd in Arizona, and he delivered medication and pharmaceutical products from the drugstore to people. And then after he did that for a while, then for a short period of time during the war, he worked at Douglas Aircraft when it was located at 22nd and...
It was on Ocean Park.
No, this was a subsidiary.
Oh.
It was a smaller... It was part of Douglas Aircraft, but it was a smaller place that specialized in something. I'm not really sure what it was. And it was located at 22nd and about Olympic before the freeway came through. It's no longer there.
Okay.
So he worked there shortly. And then after that, then he got a job at Bonds Market here in Santa Monica on 14th and Wilshire. Oh. And he was a porter there.
How long did he work for Vaughn?
Oh, I would say until in the 60s when he retired.
Oh, okay.
The early 60s. If not, yeah. The early 60s, late 50s.
No, he was 60s. He was 60s when I started working here.
Okay. Yeah, and then he had evening jobs too, because back in those days, my mother didn't work. My mother was a homemaker. And so my father picked up the slack. And so my father, after he left Vaughn's in the afternoon coming home, he would get some rest, and then he would go, and he was a janitor at Fisher Lumber Company, which was at 14th and Colorado. And then after he cleaned up there, then he would go down to 11th Street, which was 11th and right off of Olympic. And there was a toy manufacturer back in there called Celco, Celco or something like that. And so he would clean up in there after hours, after the crew, the people would leave. And when my sisters and I became older, then he would take us sometimes to help him. So my sisters and I, we would clean the ashtrays, empty the trash, and he would sweep, and we would dust, and he would clean the restrooms. He didn't want us doing anything like that, but we would dust the desk and empty the ashtrays and the trash.
Sounds like he put in some long days.
He did. And it was 6 to 7 days a week.
Oh my.
But that's what he had to do for his family. And, you know, he was an excellent father and provider.